In Bernardsville, New Jersey, the first drone appeared on December 12th at 8:47 p.m., hovering outside Julie Mitchell's bedroom window as she changed. I am the Nightmare Maestro, and tonight's tale will make you question who might be watching your most private moments through mechanical eyes. The December frost had transformed Bernardsville into a postcard-perfect suburb, strings of holiday lights reflecting off ice-glazed lawns. Emma Fisher sat at her kitchen table, warming her hands around a mug of tea as she graded her students' English essays. The quiet domesticity of her evening shattered when movement caught her eye, a shadow drifting across her backyard's blanket of white. At first, she thought it was a bird. Then, the shadow stopped, hovering. Through gaps in the gently falling snow, she made out the distinctive shape of a commercial drone, larger than the toy versions her students sometimes brought to school. Its dark body blended with the night sky, but she could clearly see its camera lens adjusting, focusing directly on her kitchen window. Emma's first instinct was to wave it away, assuming some neighborhood kid was testing a Christmas present early. But something about its stillness made her pause. The drone's position provided a perfect view into her kitchen, her living room, and the upstairs windows. It wasn't moving like someone learning to pilot. It maintained its position with unsettling precision. She reached for her phone to record the intrusion, but the drone suddenly killed its navigation lights and ascended straight up, vanishing into the low cloud cover. Only then did Emma notice the goosebumps on her arms, the way her tea had gone cold. Checking her phone's camera roll, she found her attempted video showed only darkness. Later that night, as Emma got ready for bed, she heard the faint whir again. Through her bathroom window, she glimpsed another drone, or perhaps the same one, its camera now aimed at her bedroom. She quickly killed the lights and called the police. By the time they arrived 20 minutes later, there was nothing to see except fresh tracks in the snow leading from her back fence to the woods. Tracks too precise to be animal, too small to be human. The responding officer wrote it off as kids playing pranks, but his casual tone couldn't mask his unease when Emma showed him photos from her security camera. A human figure standing at the edge of her property, face hidden by shadow, head tilted up toward the drone as if receiving signals. The next morning brought a fresh blanket of snow and whispered conversations at Bernardsville's Corner Cup Cafe. Emma overheard fragments that mirrored her experience as she waited for her coffee. Julie Mitchell, whose teenage daughter took dance classes at the community center, described a drone watching their second-story windows. The Hendersons reported one hovering over their backyard during their daughter's 16th birthday party. Each sighting involved homes with teenage girls or young women. Emma's stomach turned as she remembered the figure in her yard. She approached Julie's table, introduced herself, and shared her experience. Julie's face paled. Did you notice any strange cars parked on your street? Black SUV, maybe? Emma hadn't, but Julie had. The same vehicle appearing near her house 3 times in the past week, always when the drone was active. At the police station, Officer Mills walked Emma through a map of reported sightings. Red pins dotted the residential areas in a pattern that couldn't be coincidental. All incidents occurred between 8 p.m. and midnight. All targeted homes had privacy fences or bordered wooded areas. All victims were women living alone or families with teenage daughters. We're taking this seriously now, Mills admitted, pointing to surveillance photos from various home security systems. The same black SUV appeared in several, its license plate always just out of frame or slightly blurred. But whoever's operating these drones knows law enforcement protocols. They're careful to stay just within legal flight zones, just far enough away to make identification impossible. That afternoon, Emma found an envelope in her faculty mailbox at school. Inside, a photograph of her grading papers the previous night, taken through her kitchen window. The quality was professional grade, the angle suggesting it came from the drone. On the back, handwritten coordinates and a time, her home address, tonight at 11 p.m. Walking to her car after school, Emma spotted a black SUV idling at the far end of the teacher's lot. As she hurried past, she glimpsed sophisticated camera equipment mounted inside and a laptop displaying a grid of video feeds. The driver wore a black cap pulled low, speaking into a radio. When her eyes met his in the rearview mirror, he smiled, a cold, professional expression that transformed her fear into certainty. These weren't random voyeurs or teenage pranks. The drones were part of something larger, more organized, and now they knew she had seen too much. Emma barely slept that night, watching shadows move across her yard through closed curtains. The drone never appeared at the designated time. Instead, she found something worse the next morning. Her back door's security camera had been carefully repositioned, its view now blocked by a branch that hadn't been there yesterday. Someone had been on her property while she watched the skies. At school, Julie Mitchell's daughter wasn't in class. According to the office, she'd called in sick. But at lunch, Emma overheard two students discussing how they'd seen Julie frantically packing her car at dawn. The Mitchell house now stood empty, a for sale sign already planted in their frozen lawn. Their sudden departure left only questions, and a single drone propeller found in their backyard. Emma took the propeller to Officer Mills. His expression darkened as he examined it. "Military-grade composite materials," he explained, "not available to civilians. We've found 3 others in the past week." He spread photos across his desk, identical propellers recovered near homes that had reported sightings. Each family had moved away within days of finding one. That evening, Emma joined an emergency community watch meeting at the library. 30 concerned residents shared similar stories: strange cars, repositioned security cameras, unusual clicks on their phone lines. Carol Newman, who lived 2 streets over, revealed that her teenage daughter's laptop had been accessed remotely, its camera activated without permission. The timestamps matched known drone sightings. As Emma walked home, clouds heavy with impending snow, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Every house that had reported drone activity had subtle marks scratched into their mailbox posts, marks she now recognized on her own. The watchers weren't just observing, they were marking targets. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your cloud storage." With trembling fingers, Emma opened her Photos app. Dozens of new images had been uploaded from her phone without her knowledge, all showing her going about her daily routine, getting coffee, teaching class, grading papers. The most recent was time-stamped 5 minutes ago, showing her walking home, taken from behind. She spun around, heart pounding. The street appeared empty, but a fresh set of footprints in the snow led from a nearby hedge to a parked van she'd never seen before. Through its tinted windows, she caught the faint glow of electronic equipment. Emma spent that night at a motel off Interstate 287, paying cash. Sleep proved impossible as she pieced together a disturbing pattern using photos from her phone. The surveillance wasn't random. It showed specific interest in her interactions with students, particularly during parent-teacher conferences. Photos of her classroom, close-ups of her grade book, shots of her car in the school parking lot. The next morning's faculty meeting revealed more. 3 female teachers had resigned abruptly in the past month. Their classrooms now sat empty, personal items still in their desks, as if they'd left in a hurry. The principal seemed unusually tense, avoiding questions about their departure. In her classroom, Emma noticed something odd about the new maintenance worker changing light bulbs, his ladder positioned perfectly to access the ceiling tiles. During lunch, she snuck back in and discovered a small wireless camera hidden above her desk, its lens trained on her chair. The device looked professional, expensive, designed to transmit rather than record. A quick check of other classrooms revealed more cameras, all in rooms that had belonged to the missing teachers. Emma's hands shook as she photographed them. Before she could show Officer Mills, her phone died unexpectedly. At the electronics store, the technician found sophisticated spyware installed. Every photo she'd taken, every call she'd made, had been monitored. That evening, Carol Newman appeared at Emma's motel room, her face pale with fear. Her daughter hadn't been sick last week. She'd been questioned by men claiming to be federal agents. They showed surveillance photos, asked about specific teachers, about changes in their behavior, the same teachers who had disappeared. Through the motel window, Emma spotted the black SUV in the parking lot. Two men in dark suits emerged, speaking into earpieces. They moved with military precision, scanning windows systematically. The drone buzz started moments later. A familiar sound, now heavy with purpose. Carol's voice shook as she pulled out her phone, showing Emma an email her daughter had received that morning. It contained detailed observations of 5 other female teachers in nearby towns, all single, all working with teenage students. The list ended with a photo of Emma leaving the electronics store, marked with a single word: next. Emma and Carol barely made it to Carol's car before the men in suits reached the motel's second floor. As they pulled onto the highway, a familiar drone followed overhead, keeping pace despite their speed. Carol's hands trembled on the steering wheel as she explained what her daughter had discovered: encrypted emails, surveillance logs, personnel files. The operation had been running for months across multiple states, focusing on educators with access to student records. They drove to the local news station, hoping to expose the operation. In the parking lot, they found the station's investigative reporter slumped over his steering wheel, alive but unconscious. His laptop screen displayed an half-written article about missing teachers across the Northeast. The cursor still blinked at the end of his last sentence. Pattern suggests coordinated human trafficking operation, targeting. Emma's blood ran cold as more pieces clicked into place. The missing teachers' classrooms had all bordered the school's rear emergency exits. Their students were predominantly from wealthy families. The surveillance wasn't just gathering data, it was assessing security patterns, memorizing schedules, identifying vulnerable targets. Back at Carol's house, they found her daughter's laptop missing and her window forced open. The girl herself was safe, staying with relatives, but her room had been methodically searched. Pinned to her pillow was a photo of Emma in the news station parking lot, taken less than an hour ago. The message was clear. They were always one step ahead. Officer Mills called as they were leaving. His voice was tight, professional. "Stop digging, Emma, please. They've got my daughter." In the background, she heard the distinctive whir of drone propellers. "Just remember, they only take the ones who notice, the ones who look too closely." The line went dead. Through Carol's kitchen window, Emma spotted 3 black SUVs converging on the street. Men in tactical gear emerged, moving with practiced efficiency. No police markings, no federal badges, just well-organized professionals closing in. The drone overhead now carried something that looked distinctly like a weapons mount. They fled through Carol's back door as flashlight beams swept the front yard. The drone tracked their movement, its camera adjusting to the darkness. Emma's teacher instincts screamed at the methodical nature of the search. These weren't random criminals, but trained operators executing a well-practiced containment protocol. They cut through neighboring yards, ducking under motion sensors and dodging security cameras. Emma had graded enough papers from these homes to know every blind spot. But their pursuers anticipated this, hurting them with precise movements, blocking obvious escape routes. The neighborhood's security features, meant to protect, now formed a perfect trap. Carol's phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number containing live thermal imaging of their heat signatures moving between houses. The next text was simpler. "Your daughter sends her regards." Carol stumbled, eyes wide with terror. The momentary hesitation cost them their lead. Two figures emerged from behind a garden shed, wearing night vision goggles and carrying what looked like tranquilizer guns. Emma recognized one's stance, the same man from the SUV at school. They backed away, only to hear the crunch of footsteps in snow behind them. The drone's buzz grew louder, now joined by others, forming a net of surveillance above. Emma spotted their only chance, the Petersons' old storm drain. As a teacher, she'd warned kids away from it for years. Now she yanked the rusted grate open, pushing Carol through. The space was tight, pitch black, and bitterly cold. They crawled through icy water as voices echoed behind them, accompanied by the static of radio communications. The drain led to a maintenance tunnel. Their breath frosted in the beam of Emma's phone light as they heard pursuit splashing closer. Carol's earlier stumble made sudden, horrible sense. She'd been letting them follow her phone's signal. She wasn't just scared for her daughter. She was compromised. Emma looked back to see Carol raising something that glinted dully in the darkness. A small transmitter, her hand shaking as she pressed its button. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They have my Amy. They said they'd hurt her if—" The tunnel filled with the sound of approaching footsteps from both directions. Emma ran, not toward an exit. They'd have those covered, but deeper into the maintenance tunnels. Her years of reading student essays about urban exploration finally paid off as she navigated the underground maze. Behind her, Carol's apologies dissolved into quiet sobs, then silence. The pursuit fanned out methodically, their footsteps echoing from multiple directions. Emma's phone died, plunging her into absolute darkness. She pressed against a cold wall, listening to water drip and radios crackle. One voice cut through clearly. "Target moving northeast. All units converge. Remember, undamaged." She found the access ladder by touch, her numb fingers wrapping around frozen rungs. The heavy cover above pushed open into biting wind. She emerged behind Bernardsville High School, where this had all started. In the parking lot, she saw Julie Mitchell being loaded into a black SUV, unresisting, eyes vacant. Flashlight beams converged as Emma ran for the school building. Her classroom key shook against the lock. Inside, she grabbed her laptop, downloading everything she'd discovered to a private cloud account. The drone's familiar whir grew closer as she typed a final message to every parent and teacher in her contact list. The classroom door burst open. Men in tactical gear entered with practiced precision, weapons raised. Through the window, Emma saw more SUVs arriving, red and blue police lights reflecting off their tinted glass. But the officers remained in their cars, watching. The drones continued their patrol above, recording everything. "You've caused quite a problem," said a calm voice. A man in an expensive suit entered, his smile professional, empty. "But also proved our point. Schools are vulnerable. Children are vulnerable. We've documented every security flaw, every possible access point. Now we can implement proper protective measures." He gestured at the drones outside. 24-hour surveillance, vetted staff, controlled access. Parents will beg for it once they know the dangers. Your investigation helped us prove how necessary Our services are. Emma's message sent just as they reached her. Her last glimpse before the darkness took her was of drones descending on Bernardsville like mechanical moths, their cameras recording empty streets as people hurried inside, locked their doors, and drew their curtains. The Watchers had won, not through force, but by teaching everyone to fear what might be looking through their windows in the night. 3 months later, a real estate listing appeared for Emma's house. The photo showed her empty classroom, her abandoned living room. In one picture, taken at dusk, a drone's reflection was just visible in the kitchen window. The listing's final line read, "Equipped with state-of-the-art security system, under 24-hour surveillance." If this tale of surveillance and stalking left you checking your windows and eyeing drones with suspicion, share it with fellow horror enthusiasts who appreciate the terror lurking in our everyday technology. What security cameras are watching you right now? What drones might be hovering outside your home? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the Nightmare Maestro and hit that notification bell. After all, in these uncertain times, you'll want to know when the next warning arrives. Straight from the archive of true neighborhood horrors.